friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tammy Ernest if you're new here, and I'm a long arm quilter. And here on my channel I like to share customer finishes as well as my own projects. So I have a full studio here today. I've done a little bit of different setup because I have this really big Calico Garden quilt that I wanted to show, and I knew I wouldn't be able to hold it up. So done a little bit different setup. I hope it works for us today. But today I have some updates on my pressed flowers quilt along, and I also have some updates on my Calico Garden. This is not mine. This is my first client one that came in, and Shelley wins. She got it here first, and so I can't wait to finish mine as well. This is a big inspiration for getting mine done because it's so pretty. So let's start today with the pressed flowers quilt along. And so this is through the Fat Quarter Shop. I showed you my June box last week. I did the unboxing of that, and the third block came in the June box. And so this is the quilt along. This is the little insert that comes in the box each month. Let me back up and show you the first couple ones. So here is block one. This is Delphinium, and here is my version of Delphinium. I'm using all pinks and browns, and not the called for fabric line that they have on the Fat Quarter Shop. That is the Sugarberry, the Sugarberry collection from Bunny Hill. I'm just using mostly scraps from my, or some yardage from my own stash, and then I bought a couple of extra ones, including this chocolate brown right here, and I'm really loving that chocolate brown. All right, the second block, which was May, was called Hyacinth, and here is my version of Hyacinth. This one is a little lighter brown print that I used here, but still a lot of the mauves and the pinks, really cute. And then the third block was for June is called Pansy. And I mentioned to you last week that the fabric I had picked out for this fabric right here was not going to work because I had done just a low tone white, and so it wasn't going to work. And so I mentioned that I thought I would go to the quilt store and get another chocolate brown. I didn't end up doing that. I found some browns in my stash. Actually, you'll recognize this brown because I've used it in my Scrappy Spools quilt along that I'm doing. But I just picked it out, and so here is my Pansy. Now you'll notice from the picture, theirs is a lot more of the mauve, the burgundy dark, and you can see their pinwheel really well in the middle. The fabrics I picked out made it a little more subtle, but still real pretty. I really like that. And then this is the brown that I picked out, and I'm pretty sure I've used this in my Scrappy Spools, but this also is part of the same line as some of the other fabrics that I picked out. So let me show you. I'm keeping this quilt along in one of my enamel tins, and I just picked these up at antique stores, but I have it all in this creamish one with the green trim. And so I just have my fabrics stacked up in here. I do have them marked A through H or whatever it is, and that is to go along with the this is the worst printout you probably could get, but you can print this off of Fat Quarter Shop, and I just have marked it all the way through J. And so my fabrics are marked on here, A through J. So when the pattern calls for a certain SKU number, I just look to see what letter that corresponds to in my stash, and then I pull that out. So here's one of them. I mentioned last week when I got that in the Fat Quarter Shop box that there was a fat eighth bundle of Camille Roskelly's new line, Sunnyside, and this is part of it. And I just went to the fabric store and pulled this out. I did not look and see who the designer was when I originally pulled this out. So I can't believe that. Really cute. All right, but some of the other fabrics that I pulled from my stash, at least this one, I don't know if the others were. And I have no idea where this came from. I have no idea where I got it. But it has kind of this ferny you know, fern type, floral type look to it. And this is the pink way, and it's on a cream color background color. And so the brown that I picked out for here is that same ferny print. So these came together in whatever bundle. I think they were given to me actually. So they came together in the same bundle. They're part of the same line. But I thought that would work well since I was already using this lighter pink in the quilt along. I thought it might work well just to use this brown that I already had instead of going to the store and spending more money. So here's the 3 different ones. So here's the brown I used this week, and the lighter brown that I used the month before, and then here is the chocolate brown. So I think they'll complement each other well in the quilts. Obviously this is a mystery quilt along, so each month we get the next block, but we have no idea the layout until the whole quilt along is finished, which won't be until March of next year, March of 2023 or something like that. So that's the progress I've made on that, and I won't be doing anything else on the Pressed Flowers quilt along until the July box arrives from Fat Quarter Shop, where the next block installment will be. So the other thing I worked on this week was my Calico Garden quilt along, and this one has finished. Lori Holt is all done with hers, and she's actually starting another one. Actually, another one started started July 10th, and it's the Bee Vintage quilt along. I'm not joining in on this one. I'm still trying to finish up my Calico Garden. So this is the binder that I keep everything in. This is the sew along guide that you can print off of Lori's website, and even though this quilt along is done, you still can go back and find all of this information on Lori's website. And that's what I'm doing. I'm working through the last few weeks of the quilt along, and so I just go on her website and I can look at those weeks. So this is a printable guide. This is not a pattern. This gives you all the cutting instructions and the fabric requirements, and then each week on her blog, or now it's already archived on her blog, you can go through and she tells you which Sew Simple shapes you need for the block that you're working on at the time, and then gives you all of the instructions for putting it together. So that's how Lori runs her quilt alongs. So today I have a couple of blocks put together on my design boards, and I thought today, instead of showing you the finished block, I would show you my work in progress, and then also the next block that I'm starting that I already have cut. So first, let me show you. I am working on, I believe this is week 16 of the sew along, and it is the there are 2 blocks. One's a peony and one's a tulip, if I remember right. Peony, tulip, yes, it's the pink peony. So now I have all of my shapes cut and turned inside out, and I have them shaped, and now I have them on my design board, and they are glue basted, but I still have my pins in here. I just thought you might like to see how I do this. So this is a design board that I've made. Lori has a tutorial on her website on how she makes these. This is a great use of leftover batting. Just wonderful. I need to make a whole bunch more of these. So it's made from, what do you call this? Not poster board, it's thicker than that. It's the foam core board. You can find it at Walmart or wherever, and you just cut it the size that you want. This is about a 10 by 10. When I have a sheet of foam core board, I cut as many out of it as I can. So I may cut a couple 16-inch squares, and then I'll cut a couple 10-inch squares, and then I'll even go down to the itty-bitty ones. No piece is too small. Within reason, you know, so maybe a 3 by 3 or a 4 by 4, because I can use those little boards in my cross stitch bags to keep threads on. So this is something you can do. This is also a great use for leftover binding. If you are like me, I always make more binding than I need, because I do not want to get to the very edge, you know, end of that binding and not have enough to finish. So I always make more than I need. So this is a great use for binding. And you can go to her website or her blog on, no, let's say you can go to her YouTube channel and search for her tutorial about design boards. But I really love these, and I am going to make more. Now, if you do not want to make your own, there are absolutely gorgeous ones on Fat Quarter Shop that Lori has designed, and so it's always her fabric around the edges. Very nice. I mean, if you look at mine, they are not perfect, but they're usable. And so this is what I use. So this block is the peony one, and so all of the shapes are turned. Lori on her blog will tell you dimensions. So like this block, she said it needs to be 7.5 inches from the bottom of the grass here all the way to the top of the peony, and she tells you that. She gives you each step of the way. I did notice one little mistake on there. You're making this block and the tulip block at the same time, so those directions are on her blog in the same week. And in the blog it says you needed a 4-inch piece for a 4-inch stem piece. This is cut, it's cut on the straight grain, but you're running it through a bias tape maker to make the stem. And it said you needed a 4-inch piece for one and a 5-inch piece for the other. And she had those flip-flopped. She said you needed the 5-inch one for this one, so I put the 5-inch one for this one, but this one really should have used the 4-inch one because this one goes way down in there. But then when I got to the tulip block, she said this one needed the 4-inch one, and that's what I used, and it just barely reached from underneath here to there. Not a big deal. It works, but I just wanted to give you a heads up if you were working on this one. So this is the tulip block. This is one of my large design boards that I made. You'll notice it's a different binding. This is just whatever I had left. And this is probably a 14 by 14, something like that. I have had occasions where I've needed larger ones. I don't know that I have any 16. I think this is the largest one I have. And I have several of these, but sometimes, especially some of Lori's quilt-alongs, I need the larger boards. The small 10-inch board works great for these little ones, but you know, some of those bigger blocks, I really needed bigger design boards. And you can line them up. I mean, you can stack them on top of each other, lay them on top of around each other to do that, and I have done that, but there are some uses for some larger ones as well. So this is the tulip block, and again, I think it was the same thing. It was 7.5 inches from here to here, and this cute little top of the clay pot is also done with a bias tape maker. It's cut on the straight grain, but then you run it through the bias tape maker. And I have this glue basted. Now, I wanted to show you also, I ran out of my Sue Daily glue. This is what Lori recommends for using for this, and this works wonderful, but I ran out. And being the impatient person that I am, I did not want to wait on more to come from the Fat Quarter Shop, so I was in town and stopped into Joann Fabrics, and I found just this little fabric glue stick. Works very similar to what your school glue does. You just take the top off and you can twist the top up, and that is what I've used on these blocks. I did like that it wasn't as messy as the Sue glue, because sometimes with the Sue glue, when I'll put a dot and I'll get too much and it'll squeeze out. This you can put right where you want, and that part was easy. What was a little difficult was that this kind of stretched the fabric back and forth. It might work better to put it, what I was going to say, it might work better to put the glue, to rub the glue on the back of this piece. But why that wouldn't work is because you're laying this out and you are measuring, and then after you have it set where you want, even after I put the pins in, is where I'm lifting it up and putting the glue in. So it did kind of stretch the fabric when I was rubbing the glue stick on that, and so you just need to make sure that everything lines back up where you want it. But this is a good alternative. It is a water soluble. I have not stitched through it yet because I have not appliqued these blocks, but I don't anticipate any problem. And the other thing I wanted to see is whether it would hold while I'm stitching. And so here is the third block for week 16. And this is called the cabbage block. Isn't this cute? So this middle section is made by joining these 3 fabrics together and then putting the So Simple shape on top of it and cutting that out. But this I glue basted, and so it has not been stitched yet. And you can see that it's not coming off. Could I pull it off? I could. You know, I could pull that off if I needed to. So if you come back the next day and it's not quite where you wanted, I do feel that you could pull this back off, very similar to the Sue Daily glue. So it holds it enough that I'm going to be able to stitch and it's not going to shift on me, but not so permanent that I can't undo it if I make a mistake. So that I do feel that that is a good alternative. And so this is the cabbage block. This one, because it was just these 2 pieces, I glue basted it, and then I just set some of my what are those called? I use them for pressing. You know, those pieces of wood. I can't even think what those are called right now. Okay, so I just set those on top of them. They were heavy enough that they held it down overnight, and the glue dried, and it's held together. So now what I will do with these, I can pull these pins out, and these are Lori Holt's pins, and I thought I brought, here it is. So they come in a little cute container if you love mason jars like I do, which I absolutely love mason jars. So this is so cute. This is how they come. I think these are called her applique pins. I think that's what they're called. I'll find it and link it down below. But now I'll pull these pins out. So I just pop them out of the design board. And that's what's so nice about using these design boards, is you can use their pins to hold them in place while you glue, and they hold in there. All right, so this is a test because I have not, we'll see how well my glue held. And so then I just take that off, and it looks like the only thing I didn't glue very well was that top part. What I could do when I take this to the sewing machine, I could either glue it again, or I could just stick a little straight pin through there and just to hold it in place while I'm stitching around, because I won't be stitching on this part right here, so I could put a little straight pin in right there. But that's how well the glue works, and that's what it looks like after it's glue basted but not yet machine appliqued. I did do a video about my machine applique. If you've not seen my videos before, or my sew-alongs with Lori's stuff before, is I use monofilament thread on the top, and I use a white in the bobbin, and that's what I do my machine applique with, so that I do not have to change colors all the way around, or each time, you know, the leaves or the, you know, the pot different. I do it all in monofilament thread with a blanket stitch, and it's really to me it's there, but it's invisible, and it allows the fabrics to show through, and you don't have the colored thread. I really like that. So that's how it works. Now let me show you some blocks that I have, some pieces that I have in progress. So the pieces I have in progress are for week 17, which I think is, it is the last week before the final finish. And I do have a couple blocks I need to go back and finish, but this is so exciting that I'm this far along. So this one that I'm going to show you are the pieces for the apple block, which includes a couple other small pieces. So my fabrics are cut, and my interfacing has been traced on. So let me show you some So Simple shapes, and I may not have the same. So I keep my So Simple shapes in these just Ziploc bags, and these are all yellow, and I have written on them the numbers that are in here. So this is 1 to 19, and obviously I did it this way. I haven't done them before this way. I did it this way because there are over 80 So Simple shapes in this quilt along. So it's just that way I'm not thumbing through all of those, but I can go straight to the bag. So let me show you what a So Simple shape looks like. It's made from this plastic. And I'll just show you, I think I have one of these in here. So this is where on Lori's blog, she tells you which shapes you need for the block that you're doing. Okay, so I think this is the shape that I'm going to show you here. So each sew along, or each set of Sew Simple shapes she does with a letter. So the Calico Garden, Sew Simple shapes all have O on the front. These come this way. You do not have to cut them out. They are already precision cut for you, and so nice to be able to use those and not have to deal with cutting it yourself. So she will tell you in the blog what numbers you need. So let's say that she said you needed piece number 14 and you needed one of them, okay? And so then you take your piece of interfacing, and she does tell you the size of interfacing to cut for each one of these. I've been doing this long enough that I don't sit and cut these out to the exact size that she says. I will take my, I'm also getting down there on interfacing. This is the Lori Holt interfacing. Non-fusible, it's because you don't want to use fusible with hers because we're turning them inside out. So I will take, you know, a strip like this, and I will lay the Sew Simple shape, and now I've lost it, okay. And I will, whatever pieces I'm working with, I'll just lay it on here. I will trace around it with a pencil, and then I will do as many on here as I can, not too close together, because you can see I've left some around the edges. But instead of taking that time to cut each one the size that's needed, I just do it like this. Now I don't always cut it this wide. The reason I cut it this wide is because the Sew Simple shapes for the cabbage block were that big. So I needed a really wide piece. If I'm doing a block that has all small pieces like this, I will cut a section of interfacing, you know, maybe this wide or so, because this comes on a big roll. This was all rolled up, and then I am cutting off what I need. I'm at the very end of that, so I can't really show you what that, I think it's like 3 yards that come together. So I will unroll it and say I need 6 inches to be able to fit the largest Sew Simple shape on, and then I will use the other parts and do the smaller ones around it. You can absolutely use the same size guides that Lori gives in that. So I have traced this Sew Simple shape onto the interfacing, and then Lori tells you which fabric you need. You would layer the interfacing right side up. No, you will layer the fabric right side up with the interfacing on top, and then you take that to the sewing machine and you sew exactly on those lines. And that's how it works. And then you would cut a little slit in the interfacing and turn this right side out, and then that is how you are getting these shapes here. Now you can go to Lori's blog, and she shows you much more in detail, hands-on pictures of her doing it right there, how she cuts, how she does the little snips inside, especially if it's an inside spot like this. On the outside ones, you don't have to do any extra clipping, you just cut around your shape. But she gives much more details and hands-on pictures and demonstrations of how to do that. But that's what it looks like when you have your shapes cut. And so each one of these, you have the fabric, and then you have the Sew Simple shape that goes with it. And so part of these are for the apple block. This is the little apple, and that goes on this one. But this little one here is actually a strawberry. And then the strawberry has a little green top on it, and the apple has some leaves on it, I believe. And then it goes on this, here's the background. Let me see if I can get it. And then there's the background fabric that's all going to be layered on. So you can see at the very top, right up here is the apple block and the strawberry. The apple block and the strawberry's right above it, if I'm in the right spot. And then there's some pea ones. So that's the block right there that I'm working on this week. So really fun. So how about since I've shown you my updates, how about we talk about this quilt first, okay? Since it's like the elephant in the room, I guess we need to discuss it. So this came from Shelley, and Shelley is, like I said, she's the winner. She was the first client that sent me her Calico Garden quilt, and this has been such a joy to quilt on. So let me insert some larger pictures where you can see the whole quilt, and then we'll talk about a couple of the blocks. All right, so this is a very large quilt. This is a 90 by 90 quilt, and very pretty. I just love all the fabrics. This came from Shelley, as I said, and this is the first quilt, I believe it's the first quilt I've ever done for Shelley, and she did a really nice job. And so looks like she used all the called for fabrics, and she did just incredible. So the back, I can't really show you from here, but you saw from the pictures she used one of Lori's cheater cloths so that it looks like it's piece blocks, but it's actually not. It's really cute. And I love the colors in that and the detail in all of those fabrics. It's not just, you know, a pink fabric and a yellow fabric. It's actual copies of some of her fabrics that are on there, and I love the details on the back. So this has all been machine applique, and Shelley did use colors for each one. So like around the purple blocks over here, or purple flowers over here, she did use purple thread, yellow around the bee-skep, red around the tomato blocks, orange. So she changed colors all the way around and used a very similar buttonhole, almost a zigzag type, not buttonhole, but blanket stitch, and almost a zigzag type stitch, and it blends in. You can see how you can't see those. If you get up close, if you look at the pictures of the larger quilt, then you'll be able to see the stitching around, but it's really, really cute. My favorite part, I love the smoke coming out of the chimney right here. It's just adorable. So this, when I received this quilt, Shelley asked if we could do a daisy print, and to kind of go along with the whole garden theme, she wanted some flowers. And so I gave her some choices of daisy patterns that I had seen. I didn't have any on my current list of designs, and so I sent her some choices, and this is what she went with. This is Daisy Delight. And I believe, I'll put it down below, I believe this was Urban Elements is where I get a lot of my pantographs from Urban Elements. That's where I tend to go first. But I've used other designers or other distributors as well, but I just kind of like theirs. So this is Daisy Delight. Now let me insert a picture of Shelley's quilt up close so that you can see the quilting of this on her quilt. So you can tell from the pictures of Shelley's that I increased this quite a bit. So this one right here is, you know, right about the size of my fist. On Shelley's quilt, we made it much larger. There is so much detail, and you know, so many applique blocks on this. Well, I mean, almost the whole thing is applique except for these calico star blocks that go around the quilt. You can't see those very well in this one here, the way it's hanging, but those are that, and you know, part of the cottage shed are pieced, but almost everything else is applique on this quilt. I didn't want to do this too small and just have one. I felt that if I did the design too small, it was just going to shrink everything up, and I didn't want to. It didn't need a lot of texture. It has the texture. I mean, you've got all, because you're using applique and the layers of fabrics on top of each other, it has the texture to it. So you didn't need that texture coming through in the design. You can kind of see the star flower, or the Daisy Delight flowers right there pretty well on the blue shed, and then down in the grass is where you can see it really well. So you can tell that it's a pretty big design, and I think this was, it really worked well. The center of this circle, I believe when I stitched it out, it was a little bit more than an inch, you know, and on here it's much smaller than that, but it's the same design, but just stitched out much larger. And we used a white thread, and the reason is because most of the backings fabric right here are on Lori's cloud background, and also the backing fabric was very white. So I did everything in white, and really looks good. And Shelley's going to do her own binding, so this will be going home to her real soon, and I know she can't wait to get it back. This was a very long, it wasn't a long quilt along. It didn't start like January, so about 6 months or so, but it was some intense applique. And the new quilt along that Lori's doing, the Be Vintage one, is really cute. They seem to be a little bit larger blocks and one of each kind. Really cute, but I'm not joining along in that. So if you are, I'd love to know and tell me how it's going. I know it was just the first week, but I saw Lori's video last week of the first block, the strawberry block. It's really cute. So let's move on to some other quilts. I have 2 up there. I have 5 quilts, and these are all from Lisa. So let's start out. I'm going to start out with one of these at the top. And Lisa's first 2 quilts come from the same pattern, and this is called Moda Love Charm Quilt. This is a free pattern on the Moda website, and I will link that down below. This is a great use of your charm packs. So this takes 1 charm pack, a 3/4 yard of background fabric, and then 3/8 yard of binding, and then only 1 yard of backing. So a really quick quilt. This would be great for a table topper or a wall hanging. If you're needing a quick gift for a wedding or something like that, and you've got a charm pack and just, you know, less than a yard of background fabric and 1 yard for the backing, and you could, I'm sure all of us would have enough, even if you don't have a charm pack. So a charm pack is a set of 42 5-inch squares. If you don't have a charm pack, you can definitely do your own. And one of the things, if you are cutting scraps and putting them away, 5 inches is one of the sizes that I cut. So if I'm finishing up a backing, you know, I finished up a quilt, I cut the backing flush with the quilt top, and I have some extras. A lot of times you may have 5 inches or so left, and cut those up into 5-inch squares and stick them in your 5-inch basket. And then when you're working on a project like this, you could pull out 5-inch squares and make your own charm pack. So the nice thing about this quilt is there is also a coloring sheet, so that you can, especially if you're using scraps from your stash and not necessarily a you know, a cultivated charm pack that's comes together. If you're using your own scraps, you could be able to do a color sheet and make sure it's the way that you want before you get started. So Lisa says in her quilt that she did 2 of these, and the first one she made using a charm pack called Amelia's Blues. These are all reproductions, prints by Betsy Chuchain, or how, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce her name. So let me hold this up so you can see. What I want you to notice when I hold this up, Lisa said that she did this first one very scrappy, and she wasn't exactly happy that the middle star did not show up. So you can see from the pattern this middle star, and I'll let you be the judge of it. I think it's really cute the way it is, but I see what she's saying. The star didn't stand out as well as you can already see the star standing out in the middle of that one. But let me hold this up so that you can see it. So it's noticeable, but it's a little more subtle. I think it's very pretty, really pretty. I love this, the browns and the golds and the blues. I think it's really pretty. So you can see the star, it's just a little more subtle. I don't think she's going to be disappointed when she gets it back. One of the things I noticed about this one, the border, and I'll point out the border on the other one in just a minute. So the border is 2 pieces, and I don't know, she might have added her own border because I do not see. Yes. She did her own borders because the pattern says it's a quilt that is 32 by 32. And Lisa's quilt measures 40 by 40. So she has added the border herself. And I love what she has done here. Let me show you. So on this one, she has used, let me show you how it goes together. Here is a square. Okay, so you have to add these 2 strips together first and then attach the square, okay, to either end. So that would be the side panel. Across the top, you're going to do those 2 long pieces of border first, and you would put those on the quilt, and then you would do the side ones. All right, but what I want you to notice is because she used the same fabric on that first row right here, because she used that same fabric as this backing fabric, it looks like this side square is inset, doesn't it? I just think that's really cute. Now, what I noticed, and if you want to go back and rewind a little bit and see the picture of the quilt laid all out, is that when you get away from a distance, these 2 almost blend together, this square in with this one, and then it gives the feel that you have this border. I like the look at this, because if you think of this fabric and this fabric being the same, then you have this long border, but it doesn't go all the way to the ends. And I think that's a really nice effect. So Lisa actually has a different fabric, and you can see that when you get in close. But I noticed when I was taking pictures of it that it almost looks like it's the same fabric, and then you have this border. I think that would be a nice effect if you wanted to try that. If you wanted to do a border, it would just, the border wouldn't go all the way to the edge. I think that's really, really cute. Really cute. All right, did you see your backing? This wood grain. Oh, I think this is so pretty. Oh, I love wood grain. So that was her backing fabric, and you can see the quilt design. This one is called Alfalfa, and kind of a swirl with a little bit of a leaf. There we go. The swirl with a little bit of a leaf. I like this one. It's very simple. It gives kind of a colonial Civil War type feel to it to me. I like this one. So this will make a great table topper. It would make a great wall hanging. And then you can see, again, I'll show you the picture. You can see the star shape in the middle, but then the larger star burst types all the way around that the whole design creates. Really, really neat. I love this one. Okay, so let me pull down, or while you look at some pictures of the second one, then I will pull it down and we'll see the difference between these 2. So Lisa's second quilt, made from the exact same pattern. This one is a charm pack. Let me find. This is called Red, White, and True, and is designed by Danny Mogstad, and it's available through Riley Blake. This is so cute for July. Let me just show you some of these up close. Again, we talked about mason jars earlier. Look at the mason jars. Aren't those adorable? With the red and the blue flowers. This is so cute. This really feels summery. And now, she said she planned this one a little better so that the star really stood out. And you can see what she did. That star does really stand out as compared to that one. It's just a different effect. I don't think there is absolutely anything wrong with this one. It's very subtle, and it actually probably matches the feel of the fabrics even with that one. But this one, you can see how it just has that with the bright, I mean, they're muted colors, but they're bold, okay? So bold blues and reds and the lighter color blues, and then the stark, you know, the white. It's a very white print. Sorry, I'm trying to get that. There you go. It's a white. You have the same mason jars on the top. And your star really stands out by using that, the darker red. Really pretty. All right, notice the border on this one. So this time she did two different colors. She could have done the same thing. She could have used the same background color as she did for the middle of the quilt, but she did two different colors, the red and then the blue, and then the different square on the outside. Totally different feel. See, compared to that one. How, you know, how simple. You make a small change to a quilt just in the border there, and the difference it made. I think both are really, really cute. Really cute. Really like these. All right, the background, the back fabric, I don't know if she told me. I have seen this one and I don't remember. She said it was from her stash. I have seen this fabric, but I can't remember where it is. And I think that's cute too. It's a gray with, you know, paisley type design on there. Probably goes this way. And it's a white, gray and white there. A nice complement to the front. Then the pantograph that we used, this one is called Ginger Snap. Again, a circular, but you're adding in several little swirls, little loop-de-loops there, and just feels very playful, very summery, very energetic, I think, and classic summer. Yeah, just makes you think 4th of July picnic, lemonade and mason jars. I think this is really cute. So Ginger Snap, I have printout of it. I think it's pretty easy to see. That one. A really cute design. Really nice. All right, so let me hang these. I may just leave that one back up there. I don't know. Let me put these away and we'll pull down the next one. This is a cute Halloween quilt, and we'll talk about that one. So this is a great example of what to do with a panel. I know a lot of times you see cute panels in the quilt store and you're not sure how to finish them. This is a wonderful way. So this is called Owl-o-ween by Urban Chicks, and Lisa used one panel and one charm pack from the same line. I like these toned down oranges and greens and pinks. They're really, even the pink, you wouldn't think pink for, or the, yeah, it is pink for Halloween, but or for fall time, but it's really cute. So the same colors are in the panel itself. Now Lisa did add a skinny black border here, and then she did just the 5-inch squares all the way around. So you may need to do a little math to make sure you've got, you want that to end up just right. And she has done a wonderful job. The fabrics are really cute. Little candy pumpkins, little candies that you would get. And pumpkins, and then the owl he looks like he's like saying, oh, get this over with. And then on the backing, feels so wonderful. This is a Minky, and this is available from Hobby Lobby. I have done 2 quilts now, last week and this week, with Minky from Hobby Lobby, and I'm really impressed. This is, it feels wonderful. It has stitched out terrific. This is a gray and white gingham that is just so cute. Now you can see the pantograph really well. This is called X's, and this is by Longarm League. It's the first time I've stitched this out. I've had this pattern for quite a while, but I think it is the perfect match for this owl. And we auditioned several different pantographs that all would have worked equally well, but I'm really glad that Lisa chose this one. I think it just complements really well. Kind of the same, you know, you notice the owl's ears that kind of poke out, you know, the straight lines of those. And I think you have some of that, but then you add in those curves that kind of gives the same, you know, almost the feel of the moon or the pumpkins or something. And again, you don't always want to use, how do I want to say it? You don't always want to use a motif or a design that is picture, okay? Because, like we could have done pumpkins or something like that. I think it would have been too much. This still gives the feel of that. It gives the roundness of pumpkins or the roundness of the moon on an autumn evening. But then you have the straight X-type lines there of the owl's ears, or even, you know, like a bat. You know, some very triangular shapes, and I just think this pantograph really went well. So don't always try to look for picture designs, okay? Sometimes they work, but sometimes it's better just to use some sort of design that adds texture. You can see how in all this open space, the open space of the moon, it really just adds a nice background effect. It doesn't take over the quilt, it just adds a nice background effect that I think just complements the whole panel really, really well. Really like this one. And you know, I've had, like I said, I've had this pantograph for a really long time and not used it on anything else. Nothing else really stood out, but when it's the right pantograph for the right quilt, it goes perfectly, and I think Lisa's going to be really happy with that. I know I am. I think it really, really turned out well. All right. And so let's move on to this leaf one down at the bottom. If you have ever received an email from me, if you are on my email list and you get my weekly newsletter, or you have contacted me about long arm quilting and I send an email back, you will notice at the bottom of, on my signature line, I have the words, "Every quilt is worth finishing." And Lisa says that is to blame for receiving this quilt. She said this is one she started 20 plus years ago and put away. The pattern is actually from the Encyclopedia of Classic Quilt Patterns. It's called the Indian Summer Pattern, and it's on page 174 if you have that book. And this is applique, and she said this is done with the old method of heat and bond, which is not a bad method, but way back in the day when we would do heat and bond and you would cut out your design and you would have the whole applique be covered with that heat and bond. Today, if we were doing this, and Lisa said this as well, you would cut out the middle part of the heat and bond so that your heat and bond is actually only around the edges of the leaf and not the entire thing. When you use the entire thing, it makes it real stiff. And actually, it was pretty stiff when she sent it to me because it was just the quilt top and the applique on top of it, and it did feel pretty stiff. actually, now that it's quilted, it doesn't feel as stiff, a little bit, but that'll even soften up after it's washed and dried. But if we were doing this type of applique today, you would trace your shape onto the heat and bond, or the way I've done it in the past. Steam a seam is very similar, and you would trace your shape onto that, but then cut out the middle part of that shape before pressing it to your fabric. That way you don't have this thick feel. If you've done it that way, it's worth finishing though. Don't waste all that time that you've spent on a quilt and not finish it. Every quilt is worth finishing, whether it's one that you did 20 years ago like this one, whether it's your grandmother's one that you find after she's gone and you want to finish that quilt top to remember her, whether it's your first quilt. You know, Shelley said this is one of the first, I don't know if it's one of her first ones, it's one of her first times doing applique like this. It's worth finishing, whether it's perfect, whether it's imperfect, it doesn't matter, it needs to be finished. So that's why Lisa sent this one to me. And you can see she has done the applique. She has appliqued around the edges of each leaf, and then also done some decorative stitches to create the vines on the leaf itself. She has changed the color each time, and notice she didn't use the same green for the vine as she did for the outline. The outline is lighter, a very pale green. And different blocks she's done different ways. So here's an orange one where she outlined the leaf in an orange, but then did the vein brown. And you can do these stitches on your regular sewing machine. If you have that type of a sewing machine, just go through their different stitches and see what you have. You might want to practice on some scraps first, just so you know, because you can change the width of those stitches a lot of times and the length, how far apart you're wanting these, each one of these little ones that goes back out and in, almost like chicken scratches. But you can use different ones depending on how wide you make it. I've done it where I've even, you know, shrunk this down so it's really skinny and it's just going back and forth. So there's a brown one. I like that she didn't do the same color on the outside of the leaves as she did the veins. I think that makes it much more appealing, that this kind of blends and then this stands out. So each one's a little different. You'll notice like on the green one, she did a lighter color, which is a nice effect too. The dark one looks really good on this one, and the light one looks really good on this one. And you could trace these with a light pencil at first if you want some guidance as you're sewing it, or you can just do it freehand, either one. And then it's just done with some sashing and little cornerstones at the corners and the backing fabric. This was a 108-inch wide backing. I believe she said it was from Hobby Lobby as well. Yeah. Kind of a mottled green, a forest green, but a little bit of a modeling to it there. Then you can see the pantograph really well. Now I did a cream color on the front because most of those, well, all the blocks had the background of the cream. I didn't want to, I wanted it to blend with that, and it does blend with the colors of the leaves as well, but I didn't want it to stand out. But on the back was green, it's gonna stand out on the back. But I didn't want to use, you can't use a colored thread on the back because those little pinpricks would show through on the front. And I know tension is just a touchy issue, especially with long arm quilters. It is difficult to get tension good enough where you would have one light color on the front and a dark color on the back. If you have a light background like this, it's just going to show. There's no way around it. The long arm runs at such a fast speed, and yes, we slow it down, not that we're going 100 miles an hour, but it stitches quickly, it stitches, most people are, you know, I won't say most people, you have digital designs where the computer is running it and it's stitching fast, and we constantly are watching tension. It is a constant issue because each batting is different, each fabric is different. You know, stitching through 2 layers of applique is actually a little easier for tension a lot of times because you have more buffer in the middle there. The thinner your batting, the harder it is to get the tension correct. And so just understand that, especially when you're sending it to a long arm quilter, that I will always recommend using batting in your quilts, always. And especially if it's being long arm quilted. If you're doing something on your domestic sewing machine, you can much more easy. You're working at such a slower rate, and those threads, what is happening is your top thread is coming down, your bobbin thread is coming up, and those have to lock in the middle. And if we do it right, they lock right in the middle of that sandwich. If one is pulling tighter than the other, then you'll start seeing some of the threads lay on top of the fabric, either on the top or on the back. And so my point is that using a dark color thread on the back and a light color thread on the top is just not going to work when you have a light background fabric, because you're going to get little pinpricks of the background color showing through. Now I have done 2 different colors if I have a very busy top, and for some reason, and I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I know that I've mentioned that here before, of times when I've used 2 different colors on the front and the back, but it's usually because I know that it's not going to stand out on one or the other, because I do not want those pinpricks coming through. So all of that, and let's talk about this pantograph. This is called Soho. Again, we've got a swirl. And I told Lisa when I sent her some suggestions, again, the temptation is to use a leaf because you have leaves on the front. It would have been too much. I mean, it might have worked. You could have done like ground cover or something like that where it's all... and I just felt it would complement the quilt better if we did some swirls like this to kind of, you have the swirls are different from the quilt pattern. And to me, it's kind of like the fall feel of things swirling around and leaves kind of blowing around. And I just like that feel better. Now, I wouldn't say never use a leaf print on the front. I just felt with this one, the swirls look better, the Soho looked better. So it's just a learning experience. It's just, you know, anything, the more you do, the better feel you get for quilts. So don't feel that you're choosing the wrong pattern for your quilt. And you can do the same 2 quilts and do 2 different, and it's going to give it a different feel. It doesn't mean that one's wrong and one's right. It's just, it's different. And never feel that you are making the wrong choice for your quilt. You put on there what you like and you learn from it. It's like, yes, I really like that. I didn't like the size, or I didn't like the color of thread that I used, but it's a learning experience. The quilt is still usable. It's still going to be enjoyed, and don't go pointing it out to everybody that you give it to. You know, enjoy the quilt that you made, and if you're not completely happy with it, it's a learning experience. And so, especially if you're doing your own quilts, then just learn from it. Pick a design, try it, and if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you wanted, there's always going to be another quilt. So, and like I said, it wouldn't be wrong to use a leaf print on this. I just felt that the Soho would be a really nice one. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I had offered Lisa another one called Slick, which was I've not stitched that one out. And I don't have my, oh yes I do. Let me see if I have Slick in here, which I can show you, which was another one that I told her we might use, or we could use, and she chose the Soho. Let me see if I can find it real quick. So I'm looking through my binder. This is what I take if I'm meeting with clients in person, and we will look through here to see if there's a design. This isn't the one I was looking for, but here's a ground cover one. And this is a lot of leaves. And I have done, when I was doing freehand work or hand-guided work, this is a pattern that I could do. And I did on a lot of quilts, a lot of leaf quilts. And they turned out really nice. And this one could have been done. not a problem at all. I hope this doesn't take me too long. I think I have it printed out in here. All right, well, evidently I don't have that one printed out and in my binder, so that's a good note for me that I need to do that. But Slick was another one that I had and told Lisa that we could use, and she chose Soho, and I think it was a great choice. All right, we have one more quilt to do, and that's this one right here, and I'll show you some bigger pictures, and then we can talk about it. This last quilt is called Squared Up, and this is a pattern by Cotton and Joy, and I do have that one linked down below. All of the fabrics in this are from the Sun Washed line by Cori Yoder. And Lisa said she chose these fabrics because this pattern and these fabrics because she felt it really showed off the quilt, or the showed off the fabrics really well in these larger blocks. This is really cute. Then the border is actually a fig tree pattern called Strawberry and Rhubarb. And if you've noticed, Cori Yoder's fabrics and fig tree fabrics, and even Sherry and Chelsea, so Sherry McConnell of A Quilting Life and her daughter Chelsea, they design fabric as well, and a lot of their prints would work well together. The three of those designers have very similar color palettes, very similar design styles, and so a lot of those fabrics can be interchangeable in the different lines. And you can see real close here, this is the 60s Mod Butterfly Pantograph, and this was a great choice by Lisa. This is really, really cute. My favorite one, my favorite fabric that it shows up on so well is on that green gingham. I think that's so cute. This is a pantograph that stitches out. You have to load the quilt this way to stitch that out because those lines are going straight across. They actually stitch horizontal, but for most quilts you're going to want it oriented vertical when you're displaying the quilt. That's the way. And so this one, the short end is on the top, the long sides are on down, the long part of the quilt is down the sides, but when I'm loading it, it's actually the long was along the top because that's the way it prints out, or the way it stitches out. Really, really cute. Let me show you the background fabric, or the backing fabric. This is called Lots of Dots, and it's a Windham 108 inch. Isn't this cute? Let me hold it this way because that's the way the pantograph is. That is just so cute. Such a cute fabric. I like that the circles have just those kind of lines of stripes through them instead of being solid. I think that's a cute effect. And so there you can see the pantograph. We did use a white thread, and again, because the backing is white, because the border or the background fabrics, all of the sashing is white, and the white really blends in really well. A really fun quilt. And did you notice from the bigger quick pictures how Lisa had it gradated? Is that the right word? How it starts with the pinks and the melons, the lighter low volume prints, and then as you move down the quilt, then you went into the greens and the little darker reds, and then she has the blues at the bottom. A really nice effect if you go back and rewind and kind of look at the bigger pictures of those. It was a really nice effect. You could do this totally different. You could do it scrappy, where you had the blocks all mixed in together, and it would look really cute. But sometimes it just mixes things up a little bit, just to do that color grading from one color down to the next is a nice effect as well. Really cute. I love the ginghams. Ginghams and flowers together are so nice. And then you can see the fig tree fabric around the edge. And see, the white is not, it's a print, and I like that as well. And all my little threads. You're always going to have little threads until the quilt gets bound. You're just always going to have little threads coming off, and if you're like me, you have them all over your shirt as well. So really nice. So Lisa's getting a big box of quilts back this week, and she'll be getting all of these, and then she's got some work on binding to do. But that's all the updates I have for this week, and I'm so glad you've joined me. This has been so fun to go through all of these quilts, and the different pantographs have been just a joy to stitch out this week. It's been so much fun to work with these quilts. So I hope you are making lots of time to quilt, and remember, like I said, every quilt is worth finishing. So if you have a project that needs to be long arm quilted and you would like to get that to me, the information to do that is in the description below. You can print out the prep instructions in the order form. It gives you all the information you need to get your quilts to me. So I hope you're enjoying summer and having a great time quilting, and we will see you back here next week.